Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am helping my friends at Alex Syberia Design celebrate their very first birthday, and we are having a video hop here on YouTube. I'm creating 2 birthday themed cards with a slew of birthday products, and I am loving these. I'm going to be using this It's Your Birthday hot foil and coordinating die set on both of my cards today, but keep in mind, if you're not a hot foil person like myself, then you can always substitute this with a die cut or stamped greeting instead. But I'm gonna start by placing my hot foil plate onto my glimmer platform. And once the timer's done, I'm gonna move this over to my Platinum 6. I'm gonna add my foil with the pretty side facing the design of my hot foil plate. Then I'm going to add my white cardstock. This is Concord and 9th white cardstock. And then I'm going to run that through my die cut machine. And here is the peel and reveal, an absolutely gorgeous It's Your Birthday foiled sentiment. And I love that the coordinating die for this cuts out the center portion of some of those loop-de-loos on the letters. I think that just makes it so beautiful and dainty and elegant. And I have to say, I'm a sucker for a die that will cut out the innards of a letter. So now I'm going to take this gorgeous Floral Balloon Extravaganza stamp set, and I'm taking the largest of the floral balloons and I'm putting it into my Misty stamping tool. And I have a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock in my stamping tool. I'm going to prep that with my powder tool and stamp this in some embossing ink. I'm going to heat emboss this with some gilded embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. Now, I did want to mention that with this Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock, there is a smoother side and a more textured side. And since I'm doing stamping and heat embossing today, I chose to stamp on the smoother side, and then I'm going to heat set all of this with my heat tool. Now for my watercolor today, I wanted to keep it really easy. Now I have lots of watercolor sets in my stash, and I could do a number of different things to color this in or watercolor, but today I'm just gonna use some dye-based inks. I actually have some inks here from Concord and 9th. I'm just smushing those pads directly onto my glass work surface, and then I'm gonna grab a little spray bottle that I keep in my desk that has some plain water in it, and I'm gonna spritz that onto my work surface as well. And I have a paintbrush here. Now I'm gonna go in and just add some clean water to the image first, because I find that it's better if the surface is a little bit wet, especially if I'm working with something like a dye ink that's not necessarily meant for watercolor. It can be used for watercolor, but it isn't necessarily, like, that's not its primary job. And so I'm going to wet the surface first, and then I'm going to start going in with some of the ink and start watercoloring my balloon and the floral images. Now I have sped this up, but I haven't cut any of this out so that you can see how I'm working through the watercolor portion of these images. It went pretty fast. There were some times that I wanted to intensify the color, so you'll see me go back in to areas with a little more color to add a little bit of darkness or shading. But overall, the idea was just to keep this really simple and just kind of have fun with it. Now, as I mentioned before, I could have pulled out some fancy watercolors, but I just wanted this to be something that anybody could do. And I think most people have something in their stash that they could achieve this watercolor look with, and that was kind of what I was going for. Now I'm going to heat set that quickly, and then I've run that through my die cut machine using the coordinating die, and I am going to create kind of a background for this to sit on. So I grabbed this Bokeh Balloons stencil set. I love this stencil set because it also includes a mask for each of these balloon shapes. And I'm going to blend a couple of balloons onto this white card panel. I'm using some Tidepool and some Juniper inks. And I have kind of just gotten into the habit of wiping up excess ink off of my stencil before I remove it from my project, so that I make sure that the area around where I have kind of stenciled stays nice and clean. Sometimes if I don't wipe it off, I'll smudge some ink onto my project. So I'm working on my second balloon here, and you can see I've added a little bit more shading towards the bottom of the balloons, and I've even left some areas kind of white on these balloons. I think that adds some dimension to these stenciled images. And now I'm going to use the really curly balloon string from the Floral Balloon Extravaganza stamp set and stamp that onto my background using a light gray ink. Now I have to say, there is nothing better than a stamp set called Floral Balloon Extravaganza. I think the word extravaganza is so much fun, and I'm so glad that they used it. And I'm just going to continue on stamping the strings here. I've stamped one for my die cut balloon image, and I've die cut it out using the coordinating die. Now I wanted to add some dimension to this, so I've die cut that floral balloon 3 more times from some plain white cardstock, and I'm going to build that dimension up using these plain white cardstock pieces. So I've added 2 plain white cardstock pieces behind my watercolored image here, and then I added the balloon string. And now I'm going to sandwich that balloon string in between that stack of die cuts and another plain white die cut on the back. Now to reinforce that, I did add another die cut balloon string to the back of this just to give it a little bit of strength because that balloon string is a little bit dainty. And again, for my sentiment, I'm going to stack up a few plain white die cuts. But this time, because I know part of that sentiment is going to overlap with my balloon, I'm going to trim off some of the edge of that sentiment before I adhere it to the back of my foiled piece. And that's going to just build up the area with dimension that I need the dimension on, but leave it flat in the area where it's going to overlap the balloon. Now for a sub-sentiment, I've grabbed this fabulous Celebration Sentiment stamp. This is a 1-piece stamp. This is from Syberia Designs. I'm going to mount that into my Misty stamping tool, and I am going to heat emboss this using some white embossing powder. Now I've added my Nectar cardstock into my Misty stamping tool, and then I'm going to prep this surface with an anti-static powder tool just to keep powder from getting into areas that I don't want it. I'm going to ink up my stamp using my VersaMark ink, or you can use whatever embossing ink you like, and then stamp that onto the surface. Now, I love this stamp because it's 1 piece, but it gives you tons of sentiments, and they have things that are really fun, like I hope your day sparkles, and don't count the candles, just enjoy the glow. And those are a couple of the sentiments that I've used on the 2 cards that I'm creating today, but they're not just like your normal happy birthday sentiments, which I think is fun to kind of add these as a sub-sentiment to these cards. So I've removed my cardstock from the Misty stamping tool, and I'm adding some detail white embossing powder, and then I will heat set all of that embossing powder using my heat tool. And then I can use the thin strips cover plate to die cut all of these sentiments at once. So I will use 2 of these sentiments on my cards today, but I have a ton of sentiments left over for other birthday cards and celebration cards in the future. So I'm going to just kind of pick out a few that I think I might want to use and set those to the side, and then I can store the rest of these in with my stamp set. So the next time I go to use the stamp set, I know that I have some sentiments already ready to go. Now, when I started building this up, I thought that lower kind of right-hand corner looked a little empty, and I didn't want a lot going on there, but I wanted a little bit of color and texture. So I'm using the Shiny Diamond Stencil from Syberia Designs and a little bit of Ballet Slipper ink, and I'm just lightly blending on some texture. It's kind of even hard to see in the photos, but in real life it's there. And a lot of this is going to get covered up by my sentiment, but it just adds another element of texture to keep it from feeling flat. So now that I have all of my elements ready to go, I'm just using some liquid glue to adhere them onto my card panel. And then I'm going to add my little sentiment strip kind of overlapping the little loop-de-loo on the Y of my day there at the bottom. I finished this card off by adding it onto an ivory card base and added some sparkling clear sequins. And now we're going to use some of the same products again and create an entirely different card. So this time I'm using the Bokeh Balloons stencil once again, and I'm ink blending the balloon, the largest one, using Nectar ink, Grapefruit ink, and some Ballet Slipper ink onto a white card panel. Now I'm going to use the mask that's included in this stencil set to mask off this large balloon that I've added onto my card front. And I'm going to overlap the shiny diamond stencil right over the top of that mask. And I'm going to add some texture and pattern around this balloon. Now, I want to mention I'm not stenciling the entire area of the stencil. I'm just adding some color and texture around the balloon, kind of allowing the ink to fade off. So now that I have that texture around the balloon, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the curly balloon string onto the bottom using some light gray ink. And then I thought it would be fun to add my own floral design to this large stenciled balloon. So I'm mounting this large floral kind of swag from the Floral Balloon Extravaganza into my Misty stamping tool, and then I am placing the stencil right over the top of the balloon that's already there. I'm holding it in place using the magnets from my Misty, and then I'm going to ink this up using a light gray ink, and I'm going to give that a firm press. Now, this is going to require a nice firm press because where the stamp kind of overlaps that stencil, it will be hard to transfer the pattern, but just give it a nice good press and you'll be okay. Now I want a hot foil over this, but I find that hot foil doesn't work well over wet ink. So I'm quickly just heat setting all of this that I've added onto my card panel. And then I'm going to take this It's Your Birthday hot foil plate, kind of get my bearings on how it should look on the finished card project. And then I'm going to hold it in place onto my card project using a piece of tape here. That's going to allow me to flip this hot foil plate over to the side, add my foil with the pretty side facing the pattern of my hot foil plate and then the dull side facing my cardstock. And then I can flip it back into place and I know that the sentiment is going to be centered up in my balloon where I want it. Now I did trim off the excess foil and then I took this over to my Glimmer hot foil platform and I placed it with the back side of the foil plate onto the platform. I set my timer, and once the timer was done, I removed the platform from the base, took it over to my Platinum 6 die cutting machine. I added my thin shim and my spacer pad, and then I ran that through. And yes, I was nervous because I don't always get perfect results, but I find the more I practice, the better I get, and this was a perfect result. Now, this could definitely be a one-layer card design, but I'm going to add just a little bit of dimension by adding another one of those celebration sentiments at an angle across the bottom with a little foam adhesive. I added a few sparkling clear sequins and added that entire card front onto an ivory card base again. So there you have it, a couple of beautiful, elegant birthday cards, but I love that you could definitely change up that second one, change up the colors and the sentiments that you use, and it could definitely turn into a masculine card really easy. As I mentioned before, this video is a part of a YouTube video hop, so be sure to check out all the details in the YouTube description below. I'll also have links to all the featured products used in these projects so that you can check those out if there's anything that you're interested in. And as always, be sure to head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, a complete list of supplies, and all the information you need to know on this YouTube hop. So be sure to check that out. There are a ton of prizes and a ton of sponsors, so you don't want to miss your opportunity to enter in for all the goodies. As always, I want to say thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed these projects and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the paper crafting and card making video tutorials I share here. Be sure to leave me a comment below and let me know which of these two cards is your favorite. Thanks again for hanging out with me today, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.